Well, welcome to question 111 of the Secunda Secunda. This question is about dissimulation and hypocrisy. I think this will be an interesting one. This is a particularly relevant issue. One reason being a recent poll which determined that a lot of people, when they were asked what is their opinion on identity, what is their insights into history, what is it about, the number one response, 87%, was that it is judgmental, and number two, it's hypocritical. This is probably not what the church is intended to be seen as a public image. Church is not aiming to be a copy of modern society. It's, in fact, it's supposed to be a rejection of a lot of the worldliness of consumeristic world. But the description that we have probably should be hypocritical. Maybe a challenge that we should address. 111 deals with hypocrisy. If we look to where does this fit into the church's teaching, we look to the catechism, and under the topic of truth, this comes up. It says truth as uprightness in human action and speech is called truthfulness, sincerity, or candor. Last question, 110, dealt with truthfulness in speech. In this, hypocrisy in dissemination deals with truthfulness in actions. Truth or truthfulness is a virtue which consists in showing oneself true in deed and truthful in words, and in guarding against duplicity, dissimulation, and hypocrisy. Dissimulation might be a new term for some people. Hypocrisy, we've heard of hypocrisy, but dissimulation may be less popular. Dissimulation is properly a lie. It's told by signs and outward deeds. Again, it's lying, but lying in action rather than lying in words. It's any kind of pretense in a broad sense. It's setting your image up in the outside world, giving people the impression of who you are. And simulation is pretending what is not, versus dissimulation, which is hiding what really is. Dissimulation could also be the passive form of simulation as well. The term is a little bit difficult to understand because it's not used a lot within Thomas Aquinas himself. Not referenced back to Aristotle's ethics. Francis Bacon talks about it in Simulation and Dissimulation from 1897, and he looks at dissimulation as more of a passive form. That maybe you could say something and you present something, but you're not overtly saying something. In some sense, it's hiding, hiding the truth. And what you are putting forward gives people the wrong impression of who you are. So dissemination is kind of a passive hiding of the truth, versus simulation, Francis Bacon points out, is more of a promotion of a false narrative. If you're promoting this idea, then it's more simulation. I'm not entirely sure that's what Thomas Aquinas means. And when Thomas Aquinas writes it in Latin, there's no term difference between dissimulation and simulation. It's simulatio, or the appropriate ending. So it's a little bit unclear what exactly is the difference between simulation and dissimulation. But they're all pretty much seen in a negative sense, particularly dissimulation. Dissimulation is always in a negative sense. Simulation could be still negative, but in a little less of a sinful way. one stimulate evil? This simulation and dissimulation are kind of, simulate is the verb. So can you simulate evil, um, or can you pretend to be evil without being actually evil? uh, and Thomas Aquinas for this question says no. You are simulating evil. You're actually a good person pretending to be evil. If you are doing bad acts in order to pretend, then you're doing bad acts. I guess like if it were a movie and there was a sex scene or something like that, and the person was engaging in sex for the sex scene, then the evil has been done, even though it is part of the movie. The other part of it would be if the act is not done, but you are pretending as if it's being done. If you're deceiving people to believe that it's being done, then you are participating in the sin of scandal, because even though you haven't done it, you've tricked people into thinking you've done it. Therefore, it still has a negative effect. So therefore, it is still sinful. Is all pretending a lie? Is all pretending simulation? And for this, the answer is no. I think Thomas Aquinas, he doesn't use this word in this section, but proper imitation would be imitatio. So for example, if somebody wanted to become holy and they see Saint Therese as an example of holiness, they could imitate Saint Therese. It would be imitatio, because Saint Therese imitated Christ, the Blessed Mother, so she had an imitatio of their holiness. So we could imitate her holiness. So that would be imitatio. So to imitate would be perfectly good because you're intending to copy the goodness and the virtue of these people. If you simulate the acts of Saint Therese, it has automatically within a negative connotation, one where you are imitating, but you don't intend to become what you are pretending to be. You're doing it not for the good of becoming, but just so others believe that you are. So if you want others to think that you're holy like Saint Therese, you don't actually intend to be holy like Saint Therese, then you are simulating her. Maybe, for example, if somebody were to put on a religious habit, a Carmelite habit, but they have no intention of living like a Carmelite. They have none of the practice and devotion and discipline of a Carmelite. They just put it on because when they go to the grocery store, people are nice to that would be simulation of a Carmelite. If somebody really wanted to imitate Saint Therese and they became a Carmelite to live as a Carmelite, then that's imitatio, which would be positive thing. If you are trying to hide your sin, you're trying to live a good and holy life, but you're just not publicly showing your sin. That's perfectly fine. That's not pretending that you don't have sin. It's not pretending that you're perfect. It's okay to not put our imperfections into the world everywhere. Create scandal, particularly if you're clergy or religious. You could be producing scandal by showing everyone all of your faults. You should expose it to your confessor and you should work on making it better. That doesn't make you a dissimulator because you're not perfect. Nobody's perfect. Other than our Lord and the Blessed Mother, nobody was perfect. We're all, in some sense, pretending. But if you're pretending in the purpose of achieving and aiming towards holiness, then it's not a dissimulation. Just because you don't tell everyone all of your faults all of the time. The term hypocrite, as this section is dissimulation and hypocrisy, is a more common term, and it comes from the Greek definition of hypocris, which is false judgment. This false judgment translated into the Latin then becomes a simulator. So in some ways, it's very similar to dissimulation, dealing with simulation. The term hypocrite comes from the older understanding, ancient Greek understanding, where an actor would have been a hypocrite. And that's not in a negative sense. They are simulating another. So if you are pretending to be a character in a play, well, that's how plays work. Play doesn't work if you don't pretend to be your character. You are simulating the character. And in ancient Greece, only men could be actors. So there were a female role, pretend to be a woman, or if somebody was from another race, they were from Africa in the play, they would have to do blackface in order to be to simulate that character. You pointed out in this. So to imitate another is where this comes from. Now, in that sense, not all hypocrites are, in a classical sense, not all hypocrites are sinful, because if you are simply an actor in a play, that's not that's not sinful in and of itself. But when you act to dissimulate, if you act in order to play the part of the saint, you are actually the sinner. That would be the problem. And again, it's not for people who are trying to be holy. It's for people who are trying to get other people to think that they are holy or virtuous, or that they have certain characters, positive characters. They have no intention of possessing themselves. In that way, you are being an actor, in that negative dissimulation type of way. Terms end up becoming more blended together. Once you start talking about the hypocrite who's the dissimulator, you're almost making no more distinction between the two. The terms are almost interchangeable at that point. We're talking about a negative actor, somebody who's acting in a negative sense. So if we ask, well, what is hypocrisy? From the Catholic Encyclopedia definition, hypocrisy is the pretension, public image, qualities which one does not possess, or merely cognitively to the scope of the article, the putting forward of a false appearance of the virtue or religion. The perfect example of this was Molière's Tartuffe, the character Tartuffe, who plays this kind of prophetic holy man who deceives the husband of the household, thinking that everything Tartuffe says is perfect, and in the meantime he's trying to steal his money, get his estate, steal his life. He has no actual holiness, no actual goal of holiness. It's all pretense. It's all pretend. The husband of the house to steal from him his belongings. All an act. He's truly a hypocrite in that sense. If you're ever interested, you can see the play Tartuffe. This hypocritical dissimulation, St. Thomas has some wonderful lines about it. This idea that when someone does service to God and seeks by their means to please not God but men, he simulates right intention, which he does not have himself. He also seek to turn to people, not to seek to turn people towards God, but to seek the applause and their approval. If we turn to pop culture, if you watch the show, the New Pope, there's this sister in there in Africa who is able to gain a lot of resources from the government, the military, international charities, and she becomes a hero figure in the village because she possesses a lot of the water, the food, the schools, the housing. She controls a lot of resources that people need to survive. But she's not doing it in a way to magnify God or to bring people closer to God. She's doing it because she loves the attention. She wants to be this. She wants to have the power. Even in this image, she's wearing medals from the government to show her honor. uh, when typically a religious habit would be enough for most religious, because they're doing it as brides of Christ to serve God. Instead, she's doing it as for the pride of it, the vainglory of it, uh, improper intention. So even if one is doing, in some sense, a good thing, if you have any improper intentions, if you're doing it for the approval of man, then it is a hypocritical dissimulation. Is hypocrisy a mortal sin? One of the questions I asked. And this all depends. Now, this is where the terms simulation and dissimulation get really complicated. Um, uh, if you intend to lack holiness, you have no intention to be holy. Maybe you don't believe in holiness and you intend to dissimulate, make people think. You put your pretenses out there, deceive people into thinking that you are virtuous or holy, even though you have no intentions of being virtuous or holy, then it is a mortal sin because there's nothing positive. You have no good intentions and you're only intending to trick people. Uh, Now, if you tend to simulate holiness, this is a tough one because it almost points to something like imitatio. You know, you're tending to imitate the holy, but you possess a mortal sin, then they say it is a venial sin. But I think to understand this type of simulation, I think what St. Thomas means by this, people who are in their minds, they're intending to imitate the holy. I think what he means is that there's a sense of imitatio going on. Since they possess mortal sin, the imitatio is only false. It can't be true imitatio because they are possessing the mortal sin. So if one is living in mortal sin, they have broken union with God, this imitation of Saint Therese is all false because if they wanted to possess any of that virtue and holiness, they would have to first eliminate the mortal sin. They would first need to reconcile with God before anything could be an imitation of something holy. Because who is in mortal sin, one who has broken union with God can have no merit. There's no merit in the good works. Therefore, imitatio becomes simulation. I think that's an accurate understanding of what he's trying to say. Although I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's what he means. If one simulates holiness in order to disseminate false doctrine or false teachings or to gain some type of benefit, then it is a mortal sin. And this can sometimes fall on some types of deist or pop culture or very liberal religious communities. I think sometimes they can fall into this, and it's not to pick on them, but I pointed out, if you're part of a religious community where really religious garb and religious outward appearances and holiness are not part of the tradition at all, you put it on when you go to a political rally, involved in some type of social justice activity. So you put the collar on only for that occasion, and that's not part of what your regular appearance. Um, you are trying to make people feel as if you are part of that particular religious community. You know, if you put on, for example, the Roman collar when you're a Unitarian minister because you're at an event for some type of social justice activity, well, you're trying to, in some sense, deceive the press, deceive the public in order to think maybe that the Roman Church is behind whatever movement you're part of. The intention is to kind of deceive. Then there's a lie built in, and this is kind of under the section of lie because we're responding to truthfulness. If we're to go out there wearing a Unitarian stole or something because they're a Unitarian, then there's no imitation. No imitation. But if one is trying to imitate more of the like the High Church Lutheran Orthodox, because there's a sense that they're more holy and serious. Therefore, if they make a statement about something, more should be taken more seriously, so somebody might imitate them in order to try to promote their agenda. That would be a type of simulation, which would be mortal sin, or mortal sin. And really, it comes down to the original definition of a mortal sin. Anything which lacks charity becomes a mortal sin. So in any way that there's a simulation which lacks charity, it becomes a mortal sin. And it's a little bit confusing, but if we want to see what really is this type of critical dissimulation, it has to have this level of hypocrisy, this acting, right? You're an actor with evil intentions, disordered intentions. Not an innocent actor in a movie, but somebody who's playing a part, real, playing the part of virtuous or holy. And they have outward words to deceive people into thinking it. They have outward deeds to deceive people into thinking it. They have outward sensible actions, sensible objects to deceive. When you add inner disposition of unholiness matched with outward deeds and sensible objects and words of deception, what you end up with is a sign of dissimulation, an outward sign of lies, untruthfulness. This, in some sense, and St. Thomas doesn't say it, but I'll point to it, what he's really describing is an anti-sacramental. So if you have an inward false disposition, an outward hypocrisy, which is made up of words, deeds, and sensible objects, we're essentially talking about something that is sacramental. If it were based in the truth, it would be a sacramental. Since it's based in a lie, in some sense, it's an anti-sacramental. We take a conclusion in the advice of St. Thomas, and what we would look to is this idea of simplicity. And this falls under the topic of truth. It's like we are clear water. There's a claritas. You look through the water, you can see everything. There's nothing hidden. So there's no dissimulation. There's nothing hidden there. What you see is what exists. That's the ideal sense. If you have that simplicity, then there can be no hypocrisy. He also advises that you don't have to know everything, though. If you're working on things, you're working toward holiness, you're working towards virtue, you don't have to tell everyone all of your faults all of the time. That can be between you and your pastor, your spiritual director, your superior. And it doesn't make you a hypocrite because you're working on things. So I think do not push yourself too hard on that. Although, again, if you intend to, if you're working on it, then it's not hypocrisy. If you, the best way if you're working on it, while you're working on it, don't hold on to any of this. Let it go. Go to confession, really let go of it, so that you can keep working on it fresh. If you work on it fresh and you let go of the mortal sin, then you have that simplicity again. There's nothing to hide. And lastly, he says, perfection of holiness is not necessary for spiritual welfare. So relax. So if you do not need to simulate holiness. And simulate here is kind of, again, balancing. Like, does it mean imitate? Do you not need to imitate the highest forms of holiness in order to be healthy spiritually? In some sense, they're close. But he says simulate, which has a negative connotation. So maybe it's working on your spiritual life or your virtuous life, but you think you have to pretend to be like Mother Teresa, John Paul II. You need to pretend to be the greatest of the saints. In some sense, you're mocking them in a sense, because God is not calling you to be John Paul II or Mother Teresa or Saint Therese. He has a vocation for you, because you have a vocation for yourself to try to become too much like them, make them too perfectly, might be missing what you are particularly called to. So yes, copy their virtues, copy the holiness of them, um, but don't put on the airs. Don't put on the boastfulness that could sneak into trying to be too much like Saint Therese. Imitate her virtues, but relax. Allow you to become the saint instead of trying to copy them too much. Because if you try to copy them too much, maybe it becomes less imitatio and more simulation. And to be careful not to go too far with that. So maybe relax is a good advice. That. The next two topics are boastfulness and irony, which go back to question 110. So I look forward to seeing you then.